Hi friends, it's Michelle Renee, but you can call me Giggles. So I'm going to talk about my top 10 pet peeves. In all honesty, I'm not sure if this is really the best video ever that I should be making, but I figured I would share with you guys because I'm kind of getting more into vlogging, and I think you guys receive those pretty well too, so I'm just going to jump into it. I first want to make the claim that I in no way think I'm perfect or anything, and that these are all just my personal pet peeves, which sometimes I have definitely been guilty of in the past. So I'm throwing that out there that I'm definitely guilty and I seriously need to work on this list, but I just wanted to be real with you guys and start conversations and have a conversation. So yeah, let me see, my 10th place pet peeve is when people go out of their way to show off their knowledge on memes. I don't know, I grew up as a kid. I was that kid who was a really big nerd, growing up, and I got bullied because I was a nerd and stuff, and I was that girl that played Pokemon, and back when I was a kid, I didn't know at least a lot of other girls who played Pokemon, so even the boys wouldn't hang out with me because they thought I was just doing it for attention, but it's years later and I still play Pokemon. Anyways, so I get that being a nerd nowadays is the cool thing, so I don't know, it's a pet peeve when if somebody is casually talking about memes. I'm gonna say it right now, this should be for another video. One of my favorite memes is it's a pretty recent one, I have more, but my newest favorite meme is the he attack something that rhymes with protect or attack. Those are really funny. But so it's a peeve when you're talking about a meme with somebody else or memes with somebody else, and then somebody else is just oh yeah, memes? Yeah, I know those. Here, let me show you guys one, and they show you one, and it's yeah, I know that one. I don't know. I think it depends on the context and how they deliver it, but I think sometimes you can tell oh, this person doesn't go on the internet that much, they don't really know what memes are, and they just kind of discovered it, and it's silly when they kind of go off on oh yeah, I was around for that meme and everything, which is funny. Fun fact, before memes became what they were known as today, at least what I always thought a meme was because most of my middle school years was spent on DeviantArt. A meme on DeviantArt was a big, it was a big, a straight thing that you as an artist could fill out. It was a bunch of questions about OCs and other things. I'm sure there's other types, but the ones that I always saw were draw your OC as a child, or draw your OC with their love interest, or draw your OC in a different outfit, and stuff like that. And it was just kind of a thing that got passed around to other artists just around the internet to fill out. So it was less about inside jokes and more about it's a thing that you can do, that you can apply and then pass on to the next person. So I don't know, I think that knowledge is not super common unless you went on DeviantArt a lot and you did a lot of this, so I don't know how relevant that is, but it's just a little peevish to me when people try to show that they're on league with you. If you know about memes, just contribute, just talk about your favorite meme, don't be oh yeah, I know those. But that's just me, and perhaps I'm irritable in that sense, which I'm really trying not to be irritable because I'd rather be sweet. Anyways, my 9th pet peeve is when people don't communicate well. I'm definitely guilty of this, so I've peeved off myself. But basically, I don't know, there's been a lot of people who, get really nervous because, someone likes them and they don't like them back, so it's well, instead of, causing drama and stress by living on letting this other person be locked out in the dark, just go up to them and be hey, I don't like you like that. I'm sorry. It just, I don't see it. I don't feel it. I apologize, but you will find your special person one day. And I'm not trying to be mean to you. Just say it. Just communicate to that other person. It saves everybody. It leaves on better terms. There's no drama. You don't have to gossip about each other. That's just what I think. So, I don't know. I just think the world could be more considerate of each other, and I think everybody could communicate a little bit better. I'm guilty too, so I definitely have time and space to learn that as well. But that's just what I think, that if something needs to be said and it's not being said, it should be said. Giggles, 2018. Vote for me. My 8th pet peeve is when people don't think of the other perspective of the story. Basically when they're one perspective. So this is a little weirdly worded. So what I'm thinking is if someone has been mean to you and you say that person's been mean to me and they suck and they're a horrible mean person, but you don't think that maybe you yourself has done something to antagonize the other person into doing something. I honestly think this is the fault of a certain studio, which I'll mention later, but I think what more people need to do is start looking at themselves and being like, okay, well, what, maybe I did something, like, what could I have possibly done unintentionally that could have, been the cause and effect of this? Because most of the time, people don't just do something just to do it, if it's, like, mean or whatever. I mean, like, people have bad days. But, like, I think that if someone was, like, mean to you, more often than not, there's, like, a reason why it's specifically you. And I don't know, it just peeves me when people are like, I don't know why they're so mean to me, I'm perfect. Like, you gotta think of the bigger picture. Like, maybe they said hi to you and you, like, I don't know, maybe you were lost in thought and you, like, ignored them and you just walked past them. One of those things. That's just me. These are so weird to, like, finally say, because I think a lot of these pet peeves in my head and I don't really talk about them a lot. So, I don't know, it's just strange, but it's interesting. Maybe some of you guys will understand. My 6th pet peeve is, did I skip 6? I skipped 6. My 7th. I'm on 7. That's right. That's how numbers work. So my 7th pet peeve is when, like, people assume that they can relate to you, but, like, they can't. I'm sorry, some of these pet peeves are really awkwardly worded. So, for example, okay, so I'm a scuba diver. So one time I brought this up in conversation. I'm a scuba diver. I've been certified since I was 12. And someone else was like, oh, scuba diving. I've been snorkeling. There's a difference. And, and then there's, like, another thing where, like, I've definitely met people in college, or rather in the college age group, and they're like, oh, so what are you majoring in? Or, oh, what do you want to do? What are you doing? And I go, oh, I want to do musical theater. And they're like, oh, yeah, my best friend growing up did one play in middle school one time as a tree, and it's like, okay, well, first of all, that's not your story. Second of all, did they continue it? Like, you only said they did it one time? So, I don't know. I think, like, if you sincerely cannot relate to somebody, you should maybe, like, do the polite thing and, like, ask them about it if you want to. Like, if you're even interested in it. I think it should be a courtesy to ask the other person about it. I know I can be, like, really self-absorbed, so I'm terrible on that, because if people ask me about acting, I just go into it and I, like, forget to ask them about what they're into, which is a really bad habit, by the way. I'm really trying to fix that, because that's not okay. I don't think that's okay at all. But I just think it's really silly when, like, with the scuba diving thing, it's like scuba diving and snorkeling are two completely different things, and I have been told that so much, you have no idea. I've been told so much where people are like, oh, I go scuba diving too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you do? Like, I don't meet a lot of other scuba divers. It's literally just me and a bunch of people in my family that I know scuba dive, which means to, like, get hooked up to a tank and a BC and have everything, your regulator, all that stuff, and you put on your weight belt and you go down, like, hundreds of feet, not hundreds, but you know what I mean, 10s to 100 feet or whatever down into the ocean, and other people are like, oh yeah, I go scuba diving, yeah, I just love looking at reefs through my snorkel, and, like, what they're really talking about is just, like, kind of looking down into the water with no air tank. I don't know, that's just, I'm like, no, those are two different things. It's like, I go way under the water and you don't. But yeah, that's that's so frustrating. It's like people don't know what scuba diving is anymore, but I don't know. I think I have it easy in that case because my dad was scuba diving way before I was born, and so I was, like, born into a world where, like, I don't know, I know a lot of extra things about the ocean that I guess a lot of people don't. I'm not an expert, but, like, I don't know. That's what I think, because one time in high school, this girl was like, do barracudas have sharp teeth? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, I wasn't even sure if that was a fish or not. So, like, I don't know. I think I'm self-absorbed because, like, I grew up with different things. But I think that's how it is for everybody, determined by, like, the stuff that they have that their parents were knowledgeable in. So maybe it's not just me. Maybe it's just that this is one particular field for one particular person. Anyways, I'm blabbing. That's another pet peeve of mine, ironically, that is not on this list. Anyways, now it's time for number 6. My 6th pet peeve is when people get annoyed by other people by trying to see something, like, deep or with a deeper meaning in, like, a production or something. Like, I'm the kind of person who appreciates substance. Of course, I do theater. I like substance, I like purpose and meanings and takeaways, things that could ignite conversation. And so whenever there's like a short film, like, there's a bunch of like YouTube stuff where people are like, oh, this really means this, and that's a symbol for the, and this represents that. And then there's other people who reply to their comment and they're like, oh my gosh, it doesn't mean anything, it's just a little entertainment thing, it doesn't all have to be deep. It's like, well, first and foremost, like, we don't know. Like, it's all up to the creator of the original content. And second of all, if someone can find meaning in it, then I'd hate to argue this, but I think there's meaning in it, because it would at least mean something to that person, and it would probably mean the same thing, if not something slightly different, to somebody else. So I think it's a little, like, ridiculous to get upset over whether or not somebody can find meaning in something else, because it still means something. And if like, the only thing that could really lead to is a conversation, discussion, communication, which I think is, like, a good thing. I mean, like, after all, like movies, stories, productions, plays, like, anything that can be encompassed by the word story is all about communication. That's literally, yeah, so don't get annoyed by people trying to find deeper meaning, especially because a lot of the time, at least for people, not particularly in my department, but in my, like, theater environment, there are people called dramaturges. I'm not sure if that's completely how to pronounce it, but dramaturgy is a very real career where it, like, has to do with analysis and among other things. But, like, I just think it's a little, like, redundant to, like, put someone down because they're trying to analyze something. Even if you don't think there's something there might be something there. So that's just what I think as a theater and drama and analysis nerd. But, yeah. My fifth pet peeve is when people lie about knowing something. I'm definitely guilty of this growing up because I've definitely done that before. But what I'm talking about is, like, when, like, so everybody who watches my channel knows that I'm, like, obsessed with Paul Shapira, who, like, to be honest, I'm not completely sure who Paul Shapira is. I just know that he's the creator and composer of these amazing radio musicals that I love listening to, and I haven't listened to all of them because I'm too afraid of listening to it all in one go, and I want to, like, at least enjoy it on and off for at least a year before I really buzz through all of his things. But so, like, he makes radio musicals, as in, like, it's not common for them to be staged because they're original to him, to, like, the internet, I guess. And so one time I was having a conversation, this was pretty recent too, I was having a conversation with somebody in the theater about different musicals that, like, aren't super common. And so I was gonna say this was a radio musical, but I was like, maybe, let's see, maybe, like, because you never know if someone's heard of something before. So I threw out one of Paul Shapira's titles out there, and, like, this other person is sitting there, and they're like, oh yeah, I love that musical, I went to one. And I was like, you went to one? Really? Because I'm pretty sure that one has only been staged maybe once or twice. So how could you have gone to it? So I don't know. Like, I'm not throwing any judgment on that person, but, like, but I think he was trying to level with me is what it was. So I don't know. I have a pet peeve for, like, when people, like, lie by saying that they know something in order to feel that they could contribute to the topic at hand. I don't know. I don't know, this is a tough top 10s list for me to make, so I'm sorry. But yeah, I think just honesty is key, and I think it would be lovely. Oh, that rhymed. I'm a nerd, I'm sorry. Oh wait, sorry, it's cool to be a nerd, just kidding. My fourth one is when people jump on the bandwagon. So, that was my example. Justin Bieber. I'm not the biggest fan of Justin Bieber. I don't hate him, but I remember when I was, like, early high school, like, a bunch of people hated him and they didn't know why. It was just because other people hated him. I'm pretty sure, like, I know that, there's, like, a bunch of, like, celebrity stuff that people get really involved in that's really no one's business and stuff, and, like, it could be for drugs or scandals or whatever, but I'm pretty sure, like, back in the day, like, when he was just starting out, a lot of people disliked him just because he made a song they didn't like, and it was annoying and repetitive, and it got stuck in their head, and it was, like, they didn't like to admit it was catchy, maybe. Also because he has a very different voice, and, people were like, oh, I hate that boy sounds like a girl. Stuff like that. It's like, well, he can't help that. Also, he's still pretty young. That's like bullying a little kid. But, yeah, so it's not just the Justin Bieber thing. I particularly do dislike it, though, when people jump on the bandwagon for disliking somebody because people that they know dislike the same person. it's more so that kind of bandwagon rather than, oh, I'm jumping on the bandwagon and getting Pokemon Go, or I'm jumping on the bandwagon and getting those kinds of shoes and stuff. It's more so I'm pet peeved off at the bandwagons that incorporate the dislike of somebody or their reputation or whatever. But yeah, I think it speaks for itself. My third pet peeve is when someone derails a moral lesson or conversation with something out of context. This is a little hard to explain, so I'll just use an example from something that has happened with me a couple years ago. I'm old. More than a couple years ago. So I think I was basically trying to instill that you should always consider other people because you never know what they've gone through. So I think, what was it? I said it on Facebook, every villain is a victim. I think I said something along those lines because that's one of my morals and virtues. And somebody else was like, no, Carnage wasn't a victim. And so I totally get what they're going at, because Carnage is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. He's absolutely, I think he is my favorite. He's my number one in Spider-Man. I like other villains, but he's my favorite one from Spider-Man. And so I totally get what they were going for, but then it started this whole, conversation that would, go on and on and on, and it, virtually never ended, all about how wrong I was with what I was trying to get across, because they could name all these fictional villains that, didn't have a reason to be a villain or whose origin stories were unknown, when what I was really trying to get across in the beginning was you shouldn't really, or you should at least try to understand somebody before you judge them, because you never know what they went through. Like what I said earlier, most of the time, people don't really, do something harmful just because. So, I don't know, that's one thing I don't like, is when people kind of bust in to derail that out of context. I need to drink more Coke because I'm talking too fast. My second pet peeve is when people assume that they can perform a job, but it's out of their range. I'm guilty of this, definitely, and I'm about to tell you why. So, I have a bunch of dream roles, and, I think one of the things, I have a little book, I think I mentioned it in my dream roles video, if you saw that. I have a little book all about my dream roles, and so for a while, there was one that I wanted to be from this opera called The Tales of Hoffmann, and the character's name is Olympia, or Olympia, I'm not sure how they pronounce it, but it's spelled with a Y, so I always assume it's Olympia. Anyway, she sings super, super high, and that's the thing with me, I'm a soprano and proud of it. I am a soprano, definitely, but the thing is that, there's no way I have whistle register, at least not yet. I don't think I'll ever get there, but we'll see. And so, I would stinking love to be Olympia, but she has that whistle register. At least I think the best way to perform it is with whistle, because I've definitely heard ones that are lower, but I'm like, no, I like it better when there's the whistle register incorporated. So, if someone were to come up to me and offer me that role, I would have to turn it down, because I would want someone who can, actually do it, and do it well, to go up there and be Olympia instead. And there's definitely people I've met where I'm like, hey, which character are you auditioning for? What's one of your dream roles? And they say, a character that's, out of their range. I'm not saying it's, bad to dream. It's just that I think if you really want a character, you should at least train up to the abilities that are required of the character, rather than assume, oh, maybe, whatever I am right now will be okay. Which there's nothing wrong for. There's absolutely nothing wrong for that. I just think that you should put in effort to it if you really want that character, rather than just say, screw it. All my professors for acting taught me about preparation and stuff. So I know I have not had the opportunity to audition for a production of Sweeney Todd quite yet. But my dream role in that show is Joanna Barker, because I would stinking love to be her. And that would be awesome, even though I'm too brown and she's considered to be pale. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a director will like me in the future. I don't know. But I know that when I was 18 years old, I was not able to, strongly hit a lot of the high notes in the Patter song that they sing, which is one of my favorite songs. So I think, I was just messing around. I, sang that song for a year, just practicing it, just playing it, because I wanted to be able to tell myself that I could do it. And, nowadays, that was all the way back when I was 18. So, nowadays, I can perform that song, at least Joanna's part, pretty flawlessly. I'm strong enough to hit the notes and sustain, and I can do the patter. I need to pick up diction a little bit better, but I can do the patter. And so I just think that if you really have your eye on a role or any job, you shouldn't just assume that you're good to go. You should definitely work towards it. That's what I think. That's what I think. And my number one pet peeve, when people confuse Disney for fairy tales. Oh, I don't like it. So, I'm a huge nerd for fairy tales. That's one of the things I am most passionate about. It's one of my biggest nerddoms. And I'm talking to, like, the traditional ones, like the Grimm brothers. They didn't write no fairy tales. They collected them. They didn't write them. They rewrote endings. So I guess I can credit them for that. But I don't like it when people, I guess, like, when referring to fairy tales, they're like, oh yeah, Disney's great. Because Disney rewrote them even more, at least the majority of them. I know they didn't really do anything much to Snow White. I don't know, like, they're okay. But I like what they're doing now with, like, Brave and Moana, because they're kind of delving more into folklore and then creating something from that. But I don't know, I think, like, a lot of their stuff specifically, just watch them find this video and be like, oh, we're gonna go after this Giggles girl. I think a lot of Disney stuff specifically takes away a lot of the original charm and moral takeaways from the original fairy tales. So, like, now, instead of being a story that can teach children to not change themselves to appease somebody else, they have taught a whole generation of kids and beyond that if you change yourself and if you whine about something and if you really want it, you're gonna get it. But, you know, that's not always the case, because sometimes that prince that you sold your fins for to get legs is really in love with the neighboring princess. So that's all I'm saying. I'm a huge stickler for original fairy tales. Although I do like some of the choices that they did with like their fairy tales for Disney. I'm just not particularly the biggest fan of them. I still like them. It's just that I like the original fairy tales way more. But that doesn't mean that they don't know how to write a good story or a good character. I just don't like that they get all the credit instead of, like, Charles Perrault or Hans Christian Andersen, all these other people. I'd even appreciate it more if Grimm Brothers did get a little bit more credit, even though I'm not particularly fond of them either. But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, you guys just spent about 22 minutes listening to me rant and do all kinds of weird sporadic movements. I'm sorry. This is my third one today. But yeah, those are my 10 pet peeves. I should probably write a song about them. Kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'd love discussing things with other people, so let me know. And also tell me what your guys' pet peeves are, because I also like hearing about those too. They're just very interesting to me. But yeah, you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.